In the golden age of flight, when the roar of radial engines first began to echo across American skies with commercial purpose, one aircraft stood apart, not through brute force or size, but through a philosophy of speed, elegance, and uncompromising efficiency. The Lockheed Air Express, introduced in 1928, was never meant to be ordinary. It was conceived during a pivotal moment in aviation history, when the romantic notion of flight was colliding with the hard realities of commerce, when airlines were young and fragile, and when the future of air travel hung in the balance between promise and profitability. This was an aircraft designed to prove that speed could be a business model, that streamlined beauty could translate into competitive advantage, and that the future of aviation belonged not to the slow and steady, but to those who dared to fly faster than anyone thought practical. The story of the Air Express begins in the workshops of the Lockheed Aircraft Company in Burbank, California, a firm that had already made its name with the Vega, a revolutionary high-wing monoplane that had captured the imagination of record-breakers and adventurers worldwide. But while the Vega was designed primarily for passengers, there existed another market, one that was smaller in scale, but vital to the emerging aviation industry: the need for fast, reliable transport of mail, small cargo, and a handful of priority passengers over routes where every minute counted. The Air Express was Lockheed's answer to this demand. It shared the Vega's bold engineering philosophy, the use of a fully cantilevered wooden wing that required no external struts or wires, a monocoque fuselage built from molded plywood that was both light and incredibly strong, and a commitment to aerodynamic cleanliness that was almost obsessive in its attention to detail. But where the Vega carried passengers in an enclosed cabin, the Air Express was configured differently, with space dedicated to cargo and mail, and a cockpit positioned farther aft to accommodate the weight distribution required for efficient freight operations. What made the Air Express truly remarkable was its performance. Powered by a range of radial engines, from the reliable 220 horsepower Wright J5 Whirlwind to the more powerful 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Wasp, the aircraft could achieve cruising speeds of 155 to 170 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest commercial aircraft in the world at the time of its introduction. This was not simply a matter of pride or publicity. It was a genuine operational advantage. In an era when airmail contracts were awarded based on speed and reliability, and when airlines competed fiercely for routes and customers, the ability to shave hours off a transcontinental journey meant the difference between profit and bankruptcy. The Air Express could fly from Los Angeles to New York in under 20 hours of flight time, a journey that would take days by train and weeks by automobile. Its range, typically around 650 to 900 miles, depending on configuration and payload, allowed it to leap across vast stretches of American geography with fewer stops, fewer delays, and fewer opportunities for mechanical failure or weather-related cancellations. But the technical achievements of the Air Express went beyond raw numbers. The cantilevered wing, constructed from laminated spruce and carefully shaped to optimize lift-to-drag ratios, represented a leap forward in structural engineering. By eliminating external bracing, Lockheed's engineers reduced parasitic drag significantly, allowing the aircraft to slip through the air with a smoothness that older designs could never match. The monocoque fuselage, built up from thin sheets of plywood molded over concrete forms and reinforced with internal stringers, created a structure that was both rigid and remarkably light, a masterpiece of craftsmanship that would soon be rendered obsolete by the rise of all-metal construction, but which in its moment represented the pinnacle of wooden aircraft design. The enclosed cockpit, still a relative novelty in 1928, offered pilots protection from the elements and reduced fatigue on long flights, while the carefully faired landing gear and streamlined engine cowling demonstrated an attention to aerodynamic refinement that was uncommon in an industry still dominated by designers who had learned their craft building biplanes for the First World War. The Air Express quickly found a diverse clientele. Airlines such as Western Air Express and TACA used it on mail and passenger routes across the American West and Central America, where its speed and reliability made it a valuable asset. Wealthy private owners, drawn to the aircraft's combination of performance and prestige, purchased Air Express models for personal transportation and business travel. And then were the aviators, the record seekers and adventurers who saw in the Air Express a platform capable of pushing the boundaries of what flight could achieve. Amelia Earhart, perhaps the most famous aviator of her generation, flew an Air Express and recognized its capabilities. Wiley Post, who would later circle the globe in a Lockheed Vega, understood the lineage and engineering excellence that the Air Express represented. These were not simply endorsements, they were validations of Lockheed's design philosophy, proof that the company's commitment to speed and efficiency resonated with those who understood aviation most intimately. Yet for all its achievements, the Air Express was never produced in large numbers. Only 17 were built between 1928 and 1930, a reflection not of failure, but of the rapidly evolving nature of aviation technology during this period. The late 1920s and early 1930s were years of extraordinary change, when wooden construction was giving way to aluminum, when radial engines were growing more powerful and reliable almost by the month, and when the economics of air transport were shifting towards larger, more capable airliners that could carry more passengers and generate more revenue per flight. The Air Express, designed for a specific niche, found that niche narrowing even as the aircraft proved its worth. But in the brief window of its operational prime, it accomplished something that would echo far beyond its production numbers. It established Lockheed as a builder of aircraft that prioritized performance, that understood the value of aerodynamic refinement, and that refused to accept the compromises that had defined earlier generations of design. The legacy of the Lockheed Air Express is measured not in fleet size or years of service, but in what it represented: a philosophy, a moment of transition, and a proof of concept. It demonstrated that commercial aviation could be fast without being reckless, that elegance and efficiency were not mutually exclusive, and that the future belonged to those willing to challenge convention. The cantilevered wing, the streamlined fuselage, the enclosed cockpit, these were not merely features, they were statements of intent, markers on the path towards the modern airliner. When Lockheed went on to produce the Electra, the Hudson, and eventually the Constellation, the DNA of the Air Express was there, woven into the company's identity as a maker of aircraft that flew faster, farther, and with more grace than their competitors. In the history of aviation, some aircraft are remembered for their numbers, some for their combat records, and some for the records they set. The Lockheed Air Express is remembered for something quieter, but no less significant. It showed the world what was possible when engineering ambition met commercial necessity, and it did so with a confidence that required no apology and no exaggeration. It simply flew, and in flying, it changed what people expected from the machines that would carry them into the sky.